I just want to welcome everyone here. I apologize that we are still going to be working in the background, getting one of our presenters hopefully set up so that you'll be able to hear the amazing prayer and the amazing flute music he has been so generous to provide us with this evening. So good evening again. I hope that you were all able to find time to relax over the holidays. And I wanted to extend Happy New Year to everybody and just thank you for your patience in getting started. Hopefully we'll be able to get these issues ironed out in time. Next slide, please. So I wanted to welcome you to our Providing Traditional Medicine Sources to Youth Through Telehealth event. This is our second webinar in our Mental Wellness Community of Learning series. This series is focused on providing ways to support and enhance the mental wellness of our youth and young adult community members, especially during these kind of crazy times. Our first series was in December, and you can view that recording on our SUNY landing page, and our third, next and last series session is going to be occurring on January 27th. Next slide, please. Just as a little introduction to me, so you know who's kind of coming here to speak to you today. My name is Emily Baer. I have a Master of Public Health with a specialism in epidemiology, and I currently serve as the Public Health Associate in the Technical Assistance Department here at NCUI. And I also wanted to just say thank you. You'll see Mindy Pretty in the background. She's our comms associate here, one of our comms associates, and she's kind of running the show today. So thank you, Mindy. Next slide. Many of you are probably very familiar with NCUI and our mission already. We are the national nonprofit organization devoted to the support and development of quality, accessible, and culturally competent health and public health services for American Indians and Alaska Natives, specifically living in urban areas. And we're actually the only national representative of 41 Title V UIOs. And we work to improve the health of over 70% of the American Indian and Alaska Native population that lives in urban areas. Next slide. Just moving right along, we do have some general housekeeping reminders and just general guidelines to remember during this event. This webinar is being recorded. All mics are muted during the presentation, but we do encourage you to turn your camera on and participate if you're able to do so. Feel free to turn it off, of course, during the presentation if you need to. Questions or comments during the presentation can be typed into the chat box, and there will be time for a Q&A after. So if there's something that comes to you that you don't want to forget, I know that happens to me, just feel free to type it into the chat box and we will be able to answer it at the end. Slides and recording will be available at the link provided here at ncui.org/SUNY. And that is our landing page for all our previous webinars as well in this series. Finally, there is an evaluation to follow the end of the session. We really value your feedback. We're working to tailor our activities to our youth community members, and this is a slightly newer project that we're working on. So especially in this ever-changing environment, we're really hoping that if you have a couple minutes to spare to share your thoughts, that you'll take the time to do so. It truly is appreciated. Next slide. This is a brief agenda of our event today. You should have received this in your registration email as well. Just to go over it in general and what to expect. I'm, of course, giving the welcome and introductions. Shawn is our main guest presenter here. Today, he'll be leading us today, and he will start us off with an introduction and biography, talking a little bit about his own cultural perspective, and and then leading us in an opening prayer song. Brandy McGinnis will hopefully be able to join us as well for the opening prayer flute, opening and closing prayer flute music. And Shawn will then lead us through the smudging activity and background before we have kind of time for discussion or any questions, and we move into the closing song. Next slide. Just as a reminder, if you're less familiar with the Zoom platform, I know that many people are still using like Adobe Connect. So if you're less familiar with Zoom and you would like to use the chat box, the easiest way to do that is to scroll down with your cursor to the bottom of your screen. There should be a black toolbar that pops up, and somewhere usually in the center of that toolbar is an icon for a chat. It looks like a speech bubble. And if you select that and then type your question into the chat box that appears, we will be able to see your comment. Next slide. Before we get started, we're just going to pause for 1 minute. I just wanted to say before I introduce our amazing presenters that we envision this event to be an example of best practices when providing traditional Native American medicine services to youth and young adults. And during this time of great uncertainty, we are aiming to welcome in 2021 and the promise it brings while moving forward, and kind of cleansing ourselves of 2020 and leaving behind any negativity, I guess, as we move forward through this. So those who did request medicine, just as a side note, you should have received that. And if you have your own medicine supplies at home, then feel free to participate with whatever you prefer. So moving forward, Shawn, I just wanted to introduce quickly, we theoretically, hopefully, barring technical issues, we have 2 guests joining us today. And I'm honored to introduce Shawn Ironmaker to join and lead this healing ceremony today. He's a member of the Aani and Nakota Nations in North Central Montana, and as well as the Shahia and Anishinaabe tribes as well. He's a business specialist at Buffalo Horse Incorporated. Shawn, I'm actually going to pass it over to you in a minute, but next slide for now. And Brandy McGinnis should be joining us as well. He is an accomplished Native American flutist. He's of the Eastern Band Cherokee, and he's also a Native American veteran. Next slide. I'm going to pass it over to Shawn. He's actually going to share a little bit of intro and bio with us before the opening prayer. Thank you, Shawn.
Thank you, Miss Emily. First of all, I wanted to give a thanks to the staff at NACUI, all the administration, and the participants. It's very, I'm very thankful to be able to be a part of the conversation and discussion when it comes to healing and prayer. And Hamidagiabi, Wambligi Chianga, Aninan, Nakon, Shahia, Anishinaabe. What I said to you is, hello, my relatives. My name is Sits with the Eagle in my language, and I'm Nakota, Cree, and Chippewa. And my people, we originate from the north central Montana area. We're about 30 miles from the Canadian border. And I live currently in Washington, D.C. I am a community member, and I'm always thankful because as I mentioned, when it comes to helping out with NACUI, the National Council of Urban Indian Health, also with Native American Lifelines in Baltimore City, and then the DMV area, I always want to make sure that I'm helping out with our community. And in situations like this, it's very necessary. All of our people are going through hard times when it comes to our nation as a whole with the pandemic. This is a great opportunity because entering into a brand new year, we could put a lot of the things that weren't suitable to us behind us, and then in our discussion with this tonight, I'm very thankful for, as I mentioned, the staff of NACUI and Native American Lifelines and in all of our community to have the suggestion of talking about prayer and healing, and one of the things that's important for my people and all of the indigenous people here. I'm gonna call us First Nation people in North and South America. All of our tribes, we sometimes forget, we're social people, and what I mean by that is that back home where I come from, when there's situations when things are good or bad, we always come together in almost like a talking circle, and so everybody will come together and eat together, and then we pray together and we talk together. And so I'm again thankful for NACUI for setting this up, because now we have to do it on a virtual level, but in mind and in spirit, we're here together. And so one of my great friends, he's a Native veteran. His name is Mr. Randy McGinnis. He's a world-renowned flute player. He, like I said, he's a, Miss Emily mentioned, he's an Eastern band, Cherokee. He lives on the West Coast. He was having a little bit of technical issues, and so as we get started, I also wanted to explain that when it comes to prayer and such, my people, we have a rite of passage to be able to be. You have to be asked to speak, or you have to be taught to pray. Even though we can all pray individually, it's just that rite of passage for, I guess, maybe a hierarchy in our people. And so in our people, there's a word that we use. It's called wakan, and a wakan is like a holy man that can speak to Creator. And I'm not a wakan, so I wanted to, acknowledge that I'll help out. But one of the gifts that I do have is I've been gifted with the ability to sing, and one of the things that in all of our people, when we pray, we use the drum to help us bring together those good feelings to remove the bad feelings. And so if you ever attended any of our events like a powwow or a gathering, we always have special songs, and especially prayer songs, to give acknowledgement, or even like with my people back home, when we have an event, we have what are called doorway songs. And so like this type of song would be a doorway song. So for example, let's imagine that NACUI and the staff brought you all here together, and we're all sitting together in a circle, and then the staff, like say Miss Emily and the hosts, they would be lined up almost like doing a grand entry, kind of like if you went to a rodeo and they all ride in and you could see the participants. And so that's what this would be like. So during this type of song, a prayer song or a doorway song, it would be like bringing those hosts in so we can begin the event in that respect. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and start with a prayer song, and hopefully Mr. Randy can get logged on or join us. And if he doesn't, then I'll take a quick pause after I'm done singing, and then I will just dial my mobile number to his, and then we'll just share his flute music, over the audio. So the song that I'm going to sing is my people, the Nakota people. We're part of the Sioux Nation, and when we think of the Sioux Nation, the first is we always remember Sitting Bull, because he was like one of the greatest chiefs that that brought all our people together, whether it was in peacetime or wartime, and healing. And the Nakota people, there's two branches. There's the Nakota that are related to the Lakota and the Dakota, and then there's a Nakoda, and that's what I am. And the Da, our people are called the Stony people. They call us Stony because when we were buffalo people, and when we would hunt, we were nomadic, and so we would follow the buffalo. We call them Pei, like a big beast, and then we refer to them as bison and not buffalo. And so when we would follow Pei, we would, right when we'd get our kills, we would harvest the entire animal. They would never waste any part of it, and then they would immediately dig pits in the ground and line the pits with rocks, and then put the meat in the pit, and then cover it up and cook it, and then they would store it that way. So when other tribes seen us, they called us stone cookers or stony people, and then our people also lived with the Anishinaabe, the Ojibwe, and the Chippewa, and the Cree people. So we actually originated from around the Hudson Bay area in Ontario, and northern area. So our home range was from the Hudson Bay area all the way to current day Montana. And so those are the areas that we lived. So this song is a prayer song, as I mentioned, and it can be used as an opening song for an event, a doorway song. And it's saying, walk with the Creator. And so Wakantanka is how we say Creator or grandfather, that holy being that is everything that our souls recognize, and then whom we pray to in ceremony. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. Hey, Namia, thank you. So if you'll give me just a moment, I'm going to pause, and then I'll get Mr. Randy on the mobile phone so he can share his flute prayer song. Stand by. My apology, folks. Randy can see us, and I'm just trying to get his audio on. If not, then again, as I mentioned, I'll have him on my mobile phone. Stand by.
Yeah, I would like to thank all of you for having me here, and I'm glad to share this. And culture goes way back, and we do a lot of the same things in Smudge. And I am fortunate enough to speak our language, and so I can say "shio," "oshigwoju." I said hello and how are you. So I hope if there's any jalagi out there, they'd say "shigu nihina." I am good, and how about you? So. But with that, let me go ahead and play a prayer song for you. And I'm sorry we had so many technical difficulties. So we'll have to do better the next time. So you may go ahead and play the song now, Shawn?
Yes, please, Randy.
Okay. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
Good. Oh, I've got your video on there now. I can see you.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you very much, folks. And we do appreciate Mr. Randy. So that's the uniqueness of how our events go, you know, when I was growing up. And then a lot of us can realize that I've always been told whenever we do something as a gathering, we can never plan it. It just has to happen on its own. So those are all the unique quirks that occur. And that's what, you know, one of the things that Indigenous people are I guess, we have the gift of laughter, so we like to tease, and then we could laugh about things and just enjoy it. And so, so moving into the next portion of it, what I'd like to do is share with you a couple of creation stories that are important to our people, and our people meaning my people, the Ani and the Nakota, and I'll circle back real quick before I talk about that as part of the introduction. So my people in north central Montana, the Aani, Wasichus, or we say people that are not one of us, they, like the federal government, they call our people the Aani, the Grovant people. And then when the settlers and trappers first met us, our people, like, to this day, there are still no words in English for our language. And so so we would have to use sign language to talk to one another. So when they asked us who we were, we lived on the Missouri River, and then there's a waterfall where the current town of Great Falls, Montana is. So we told the people that we were the people of the Great Falls, and so we used the symbol like a waterfall. So they thought we were saying Big Belly. And so the French and the European people, they called us Gros Ventres because they thought we were big belly people. And so that's that significance there with the Ani. But the Ani people, they're part of the Haratsa and the Atsini, which are the Blackfoot Confederacy, and then also the Arapaho and Shoshone folks. So they all lived together as a band a long time ago. And so Ani means Anina actually means white clay people. And so, but in our beliefs and traditions with the Ani and the Nakota and the Cree and the Chippewa, we're a maternal people, and our belief system is that we revere all the females, and so the females are in charge, for our people. And so one of the stories that I wanted to share is in relation to our drum, and the gifts of the gifts of that prayer from the Creator. And so the story that I wanted to introduce, because it gives a significance to when we're talking about using Smudge and how we pray with Smudge. I'll first start with the story, then I'll relate it back to why and how we use the Smudge for our prayer. So this story relates to our Anishinaabe and Cree people, and in the Ojibwe, in northern Michigan and Minnesota, and Ontario areas. Our belief is that long ago there was a time where maybe the earth was ending, kind of like we're experiencing right now. And during that time, there was like a great tragedy everywhere. It's almost like the sky was falling. And so what was happening is there were fires everywhere. People were getting sick, and they were warring, and there was a lot of death and a lot of misery. And so during this time, there was this female with her family, and her name was Imamikwe. And Imamikwe, she was trying to move or run away from what was happening around her. Her family, her mom and dad told her to run and hide. And so she was so frightened that she listened and she ran, and she seen this like pond or a lake. And so she ran and laid down in the lake, and she grabbed the reed and she put the reed in her mouth to breathe, to be able to breathe. So she was laying in the water and she was breathing through the reed. And in the reflection of the water, she could see like maybe explosions and just like what looked like fire in the sky. And there was just so much thunderous noise at it. It was just frightening. And all of a sudden it just stopped. And so she didn't hear it that much longer. So she sat up and looked around, and everybody was dead, gone. Everything was in destruction. And so she began to cry. She realized that she was all alone. And as she cried and wept, she heard this thunderous boom coming out of the sky, almost like on our drums. We would hear a loud noise coming down. She would hear that, and she looked up and she seen these angelic beings that were coming down. They were coming out of the sky, and what maybe we would call like angels or spirits, and they were coming down and they were holding something. And as they got closer, they came down to the ground, and she looked at them, and it was what looked like a drum. And so she then heard the Creator, what we would say, Tugashila, our grandfather, God. She heard him speak, and he told her that everything is gone, and but he said, if I can help you, he said, if you believe, and if you listen to some of the teachings that I have, I'll teach you these things, and then if you learn them correctly, he said, I'll help you bring your family and everybody back. And so during this, these beings, they begin to make the sound on the drum, like when we're singing using the drum, and it almost had that beat of a heartbeat that that we use when we're singing our songs. And then there were specific songs, and each day there was a new song, and this happened for 7 days. And so each day she learned the song that was being taught to her. And then at the end of the 7th song, Creator asked her to, like a test. She had to sing all of those songs back, and she learned them all correctly. And so when she finished that last song, everybody came back to life. All the life, all the animals, all of the earth renewed itself, and then her family was there. And so in our belief system, that it took a female to help us in a tragedy, or when life is going to end. And then in the same respect, it took a female to bring us life. So in our belief system, with like a maternal tribe that my people are, we always give thanks to the females first, because they're the ones that bring us life, and we honor them. And so their strength comes to our drums and to our prayers first, and the significance of that is we wouldn't, just as life is itself right now, only the female can create a soul and create a life. And so in that creation story, it's almost in that same significance as to who we are, and how it begun. One of the things that I also always acknowledge is that when I was being brought up, I mentioned the tribes that I am. I'm pretty unique because, I'm from 4 different tribes that have, stories and acknowledgments all the way back to before Europeans even came. And then that goes for all of the other 537 different tribes in this nation in South America. And so when I give that appreciation, when we think of our people back then, we refer to it as the dog days. And so our people, we tell stories. We're talking about the time before there were horses here. So in my view of it would be like maybe during the last ice age, because my old grandmas, my kushis, they used to tell me stories almost like bedtime stories, or like legendary stories, to help you visualize, our ancestors. And our ancestors, they lived next to the cold. So my opinion, they probably lived next to the ice age, the last ice age, when it was here in North America. And during the dog days like that, our people have stories about other people that lived here alongside them, and they were different than our people. And so I'm gonna give just an analogy of my people. So most of the tribes that are nomadic on the Great Plains in North and South Dakota, all the Great Northwest, everybody is probably maybe 6'5" and taller. So they're very tall. They look like the movie Avatar. That's how our people look. For me, I'm short. Like I got gifted with just the average male size, but my people are very tall. So I was visualized, if our people were 6 foot and larger, and there were people with them that lived by them that were bigger than us, then that makes us wonder, well, who was here before the Europeans got here, and who were they? And we always refer to those people as they were bigger than us, and they had green eyes, but we could understand one another. And in their belief system, there was a spirit that came to them and came to us in our creation. And so our people, we had a belief in a spirit that we call him Eagle Feather Man. So Wamdi, Wiaga, Wichasha, which is Eagle Feather Man in my language. And so this this spirit, this presence, was also a presence with these people that were bigger than us and had green eyes. And so, growing up, I am also Irish. I'm unique with that because a lot of Native people are mixed blood, and I acknowledge the fact that we're all connected. And so, even those that are not one of us, we're unique. We've melted into a great creation, and I'm very thankful because in my upbringing, I was raised Irish Catholic. And so, in addition to the spirituality that I have with our Indigenous and First Nations people beliefs, I was also raised with a Catholic belief in Jesus Christ. And so, when we look at the stories that we're talking about right now and doing the comparisons and the uniqueness of them, Eagle Feather Man to our people was the same as what these other people would have called Jesus Christ. That wasn't his name. He had a different name that I don't know, but just to continue with the story, I take that back. His name was Yeshua. He was from the anyway. So the in the Irish side of my upbringing, sure, you had the religion, and I was fortunate because beyond, it felt like I lived in two worlds when I was growing up, and I know a lot of you can relate to that. Christianity is a strength that we carry as a nation, but if you go further and understand the theology of it, and then understand like maybe the sacraments of what that presence, what we call Eagle Feather Man or Yeshua were, almost back to the creation story that I was talking about with Amamikwe. So like in some of the sacraments of Jesus, creator, they called him Abba, and Abba, there was a belief that he molded man from clay. And so it's kind of unique because our people in North America, our indigenous people, we live on Turtle Island. And then some of the creation stories that we have, including my people, is that we came from the water, like the turtle had scooped up some of the mud from the earth, from the water, and put it on his back, and then we grew from that mud. So I always make those comparisons, so in the sacraments of Jesus, you have Abba that created man out of clay, and then we have our creation coming from the earth, which we call Maka, Mother Earth. So moving forward with that conversation, growing up Irish like that, I think it's called like the Gnostic journals. Before the New Testament, there were journals that were relating to the sacraments of Jesus, and they were tribal people, and it was a great thing because when they prayed, they would pray like our people. So I made these comparisons, and then and I followed them myself to have an understanding as to why I was brought up in both understanding, both spirituality in that respect. And so again, not talking about the religion of Christianity, the sacraments of Jesus, and then the belief system of Eagle Feather Man with our people. And so when we were taught to pray, we would always make an offering of food and water. And so it was unique because when you read about the sacraments of Jesus, he had his disciples, and what they would do is they would always sit down on the ground and prostrate themselves, meaning they would cross their legs and sit next to one another in a circle. Well, our people on the plains, when we sit down to pray, we do the same thing. We'll sit with our legs crossed on the ground, and then we'll first make an offering, to Gashula, the creator, and then we'll have certain foods that represent an offering to before we, like to heaven in a respect, or to our ancestors, or to the earth. We'll pass those around and share those foods together. And so again, what Jesus would do is he would do the same thing. He would take a piece of bread and share bread and water before they begin to pray. So at any rate, I always make those connections with the creation as the two understandings of during the time of the dog days, which I was referring to before Europeans came and before horses were here. Our people understood the presence of this other being, or other spirit that we called Eagle Feather Man. And so in that creation, those are some of the significances that I wanted to share. And and it's just unique because we sometimes get wrapped up into what we think should be right or wrong, or even if we don't know, when we're having a discussion on what maybe what's native or what's indigenous, or how do we do things. A lot of it is again just the belief. And so it's really great that we can share stories like this together, because again, there's over 530 plus different nations, of indigenous people, and we in some small connection, we all have a similar story and a similar legend as to what this all means when it comes to prayer and healing. So I wanted to begin with that, with a creation, and then just to share how our belief system, our meaning, my people, the Ani and the Lakota and the Cree and Chippewa, where we start with our honor for Creator and for the females, for the creation of life. I have another section that we're going to talk about, as far as like how I pray and what we use, like what I do for that. But before I do, I just wanted to encourage, maybe I could turn back to the host and see if there's any responses or anything that anybody wanted to share before I move along.
Thank you, Shawn. I didn't see any comments from anybody so far. Just many people saying thank you for your music and your prayers earlier. So I think I didn't see any other comments.
All right, very good. Well, again, I appreciate the ability to be able to share the what I understand, and then I have a lot of friends. Like, I've just got to acknowledge Mr. Peter Brooks, a great friend of mine. I see Carrie Lethard, and all the folks that are my brothers and sisters. That I'm glad that we have this support as a community on this Zoom call and then this presentation. So, how I was taught to pray, moving into that respect, is when I was growing up, everything was a rite of passage. Luckily, in if you want to call them our old ways, we had to. You almost had to we did sacrifices in order to gain a rite of passage, and so simple things like your name, like my name, Wombligi Chionga. In order to earn that name, our people have a ceremony that's at the beginning of the summer solstice every year in June, when the earth renews itself. So when you go from the springtime, when all of the grasses grow and the flowers grow, and we had our ceremonies to the Creator, which were the Sundance. And so our people, we built lodges, and we would all come together to worship, meaning that we were there to give thanks for surviving, because we're nomadic, and then and then also to ask for nourishment, ask for good things to come, prosperity, togetherness, all the good feelings that come of us being a community. Our people, which all tribes are, I was gonna say our people, indigenous people, we all have little clans, so like back home where I come from, even though we're one big nation, we all live in little groups. And so it was a unique time to bring all those groups together. And so during that, it was not only a celebration, but it was a time for worship and sacrifice. And so some of the things, like if you wanted to have a ceremonial name, the rights to maybe be able to sing on a drum, even to have the right to dance. In a contemporary time right now, when we have our powwows, they're more commercialized, and it's more of an exhibition or competition for the different dance styles. But back then, the dancing had a specific representation for any type of ceremony that we were doing. And so, so in order to be able to participate in that, you had to be brought into it, like somebody would have to sponsor you to bring you into it, or you had to ask for permission. And so when you ask for permission like that, you would have to make a commitment to go into our Sundance Lodge. And the lodge, what it is there is you're taking a vow to fast with no food and no water for 4 days and 4 nights. And so a lot of the Plains tribes, excluding mine, they do an even further sacrifice where they would pierce their bodies. So they would, pierce by putting eagle claws or bones or other things into the skin, either in the front or the back, and they would be strapped to maybe the center pole of our lodges, or they would have to have maybe skulls, like skulls from a bison or a buffalo, attached to the straps. And so, and then during that, we had daytime and nighttime songs. So they would literally get up early in the morning at sunrise, and then we would do the prayer songs like I shared throughout the whole day. And your expectation is you had to dance. And then while you're dancing, you're thinking about what your sacrifice is for. You're asking for permission with the Creator. And the way our lodges are built, our Sundance lodges, is there's 13 poles that are put in the ground, and then there's one center pole that represents, maybe a vessel for where Tugashila, or God, or the Creator, comes to. And it's unique because maybe that spiritual presence that you could feel when you meditate, and when you think that togetherness, that's where what we, not a like your sacrifice and your offering, that's where maybe things could come. So similar to like if you were going into a church, and when we go to the church, you sit in the pew and you have the tabernacle in the front of the church where maybe the holy man will share what the gospel for what we needed. Well, so this is a similar thing. The center pole of our lodges are similar to what you would have as a tabernacle in the front of a church. And so when we made that sacrifice, the expectation was you had to do 4 days, 4 nights with no food or water, and then you're asked to do that for 4 years. So you had to make that commitment for 4 years of your life, and then at the end of that, we were told that it would come to you in a dream, or you would be able to experience something that was otherworldly in a respect. And so maybe some would think that it's probably a hallucination from not eating or drinking water, but no, it was a significant gift that only you would understand. And if that didn't occur, then in our lodges we had the holy men, we had the specific chiefs that were given that responsibility from Creator to be able to be the leader for our worship and sacrifice in that respect. And then it's unique because, again, I'm making comparisons with the sacraments of Jesus and then like our holy men, and then in all of our nations, we always have that one spiritual leader, and it's not a religion, So let me back up real quick and point out what's unique about our people is in a religion, and I'm not picking on Christianity or any other religions, but people go to church to find God, and I'm gonna call it our church. So when Indigenous people, when we come together to pray, and like I'm gonna use our Sundance Lodge, we go there to be with God, and so we already have that acknowledgement and that gift in our hearts and in our minds, and so it's just a matter of believing and touching it, being able to be able to feel it in that respect. And so, but again, with our holy men, in Jesus's time, he did everything for everyone, the whole community, everywhere, the whole world, and then he was poor, and he would bring people together, and then and we would give offerings in his presence. Well, our holy men are the same way. Their expectation is they have to live a life of no like maybe live a life with in poverty, and then they'll give the shirt off their back, so to speak, and then do everything to help others first before themselves. And then when in their presence, our community will come together to give those gifts. And so our deepest holy man is probably the poorest person that will give the shirt off his back. And so that's our thinking when we're giving acknowledgement together in prayer. And so we all, that person would always remind us to be good to one another. And so whenever we're praying, it's always important that we have to think ahead and be good to one another. There's things that cause us to have negative situations. Like earlier in the day, you might have two or three things that go wrong. My brother Randy, he had issues getting on Zoom here. So instead of getting frustrated or criticizing anything, we always have to remember to work together and be good to one another. So I'm just explaining that those are some things that we already know, but we always have to remind ourselves. So given that full example, and I apologize, I like to talk and I could ramble, but how I pray is and why we use the smudge. So when I shared with you about my tribes being a maternal tribe, and then we revere the female, when Creator brought male and female together, the only thing that I could share without making it sound inappropriate is that females can bring life to us, but a female will also be able to have a reproductive cycle. And so everything in a female's body can cleanse itself every 30 days or so, where a man can't do that. And so when Creator put us on this earth, and that's the same thing, I'm going to make comparisons again with Jesus and his sacraments. When he sat down to talk to people to pray, they would always pray with their legs crossed and their arms out, and our people do the same thing. So before the men sit down to pray, we smudge ourselves. And so my people, we use every tribe has a different use of of things that they would cleanse or smudge themselves with. What most of us see is that in the modern world, all of our tribes have melted together, so we almost have uh, uh, shared ways of doing things. And so our people, we use the things on the earth that we were taught to pray with. So the first thing would be like White Mountain sage. So we use sage, and if you go into the Great Plains, from New Mexico all the way up to Montana, you'll see the big what look like tumbleweeds all over the prairie, and those are sage brushes, and that's that's what we pick, and we use that to pray. And the what I was taught and what we're told is that the the because the female is able to cleanse herself, through her reproductive system, the male cannot. So again, looking at the both sides of the duality of that, with Jesus, that Holy Spirit, eagle feather man, and then with our spirituality with indigenous people, we were told by Creator that we have to get all the filth of the earth off of us. And so the ideal of why we smudge ourselves, and it's only the men, because the men can't cleanse themselves, cleanse things from their body, and so that's what I was taught, why we do the use the smudge it's to clean off all of the filth of the earth. And so then when we pray, we would prostrate ourselves. So like, I'm gonna go back to our Sundance lodges. When we go into our lodge, the men and the males and the females are separated. So on one side you'll have the males, and the other side you have the females. So when a female comes into a lodge, what I was going to explain is when we smudge ourselves, you clean the filth of the earth off of you. And my people believe that the soft spot on the top of your head, that's where your soul gets placed into your body when you're created. And so when we go to pray to Creator or to Gashula, that the only way he can see you is you have to clean all the filth off of your body, and then we prostrate ourselves. We sit with our legs crossed. Just the men, though. The females will sit with their legs face straight out, because they have with the female reproduction, that's like the power of the strength. So just like when a female with a dress would sit, you have to sit with your legs closed. So it's just the etiquette of being a female in that respect. And so again, don't mean to sound inappropriate, but those are just the significances. And then we always pray with our arms set out. And the reason for that is that when Creator looks down at us, he can see our soul through our head. And then when we open up our body, like, with that motion, or our arms outstretched, our soul is visible to Creator. And so when we pray, we use that type of how we use that and how we pray in that respect. And so those are the two connections with the what I was taught about praying, and then how my tribes pray, and then relating it back to our First Nation people, and even all Indigenous people, and then with my own passion with the fact that, like, sharing that back with when we look at Jesus, and so we combine those two things. A lot of times, I do get criticism from others that maybe I grew up with, that have a hatred towards Christianity, or anything other than our own spirituality. And everybody's there, respect everybody's opinion in that means. But for me, it's important because I acknowledge everything that I am. As I mentioned, I'm Nakota, I'm Ani, I'm Cree, I'm Chippewa, and I'm Irish. And so when I combined all those things, I used to think I lived in two worlds until I challenged myself to understand where that presence is coming from, and that presence is the same. And so that's the uniqueness for me, and I believe, and that's kind of the important side of that. And so what I'd like to do is maybe just take a brief pause, because I would like to share about our smudging and why, we talked a little bit about why we smudge, and then how I would like to share how I smudge and how I pray. And then I do have another item that was part of my sacrifice with the Sundance that I would like to share too, and to show how you would pray, how I would suggest to pray, and then share those things as well. So while I prepare that, I'll go back to the host and see if there's any responses or questions.
Thank you, Shawn. Thanks for sharing that. I think we're going to take a couple minutes of a break so everyone can get their supplies together as well. So we'll just take like a 2 to 3 minute break. And if everyone you can turn off your cameras, mute yourself, and we can all join back at like about 8 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you. We'll start again in a couple minutes as soon as Shawn is all prepared. So Shawn, just let me know when you're all set.
All right, good to go. I just noticed Randy is now video, and then I'm hoping your audio works, Randy. And then what I'd like to do too is I originally had talked with the staff. It would be helpful for all of us because I was sharing most of like the Northwestern understanding of our togetherness and prayer, and then from the knowledge of Randy. Randy's a native veteran, so like all of our people, we're warrior societies, and so as I mentioned, we always have a holy man, a wakan, but we also have our protection. In my language, we say akichita. Akichita is that protection spirit, and there are veterans and our warriors, and then when they give that ultimate sacrifice of giving their life in war to all of our people, those are the ones that we also look for advice from. And so maybe before we continue and talking about why we smudge and how to smudge and so forth, maybe if Randy can share with us from the Eastern Band of Cherokee perspective. As I mentioned, there's different items that we use for smudge. And then, so with that, Randy, if you could share with us some of your teachings, and then that'll help connect the East to the West.
Can you hear me now? Good. I'm here. I'm presently present. So we smudge as well. And are the people around listening? We ready to start? Yeah, in our smudging, we use white sage as well. We use cedar, and we use also a wild tobacco. And it's a plant that grows in the mountains. It doesn't look like the cigarette tobacco in the fields with the big leaves. It's more like, some people refer to it as rabbit tobacco. And we will actually grind it up real small and put it in a smudge stick and smudge with that. So we actually, sometimes, I don't know if who all can see, but you went blank. Can you still hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
we can hear you okay, Randy. We can see you as well.
We can use an eagle feather for some things. And a lot of things we use for like small ceremonies, things, we use a turkey feather. We use lots of turkey feathers, which is a wild bird that we have. And our smudging is a cleansing, like you said. And you cleanse your whole body, the bottom of your feet and everything. And then, like, if we're going to go into the dance circle, you always take tobacco and make an offering before you cross into the dance circle itself. And so it's one of the sacred materials that we use, and it is very, very special for us. With that being said, we do a lot of cleansing prayers, sweat lodges. We'll do social dances, and then we'll do dances that are just for very specific reasons. For clans, we'll do clan dances and things like that. So I don't know how in depth you want this to be, but it's a very important part of our culture, and going to water for cleanse and smudging as well. So is there any questions so far? Because I went blank on the screen here. I lost you. So, but I think I can hear you. Are you there?
Yep, we're still here, Randy. Can
Okay.
see you as well.
Okay.
I think everybody is okay, and we appreciate what you just shared there as well. And and so I might reference back to you as I'm going along here. And
Sure.
But what I'm gonna do is thank you very much, Penamia, and looking at our time. I will go into the you know, how I smudge, or how we prepare smudge. There's
Yeah.
participants in here that that were given some items, you know, that would be used to smudge, and so
Yeah.
thank you very much. And I'll move forward there. So as the Nikui staff had mentioned, the I think they, correct me if I'm wrong, any of the team, but I believe everybody got like a smudge bowl, and then some maybe some sage, or any other items that would be used to smudge. So with what I was taught, like with our people on the plains, we have cedar. We use the sage, the white sage, as I mentioned. We have sweetgrass that grows on the plains, and then we didn't have tobacco, and so you know, in the past we did use it, and then as Randy mentioned, you know, it came where in full leaves, and then we would grind it up just like that, and in the same respect, anything that we took from the earth, we would always give a gift back, you know, when to replace it. And then I was sharing with Randy earlier, you know, a lot of our mainstream, so like, you know, what the mainstream beliefs that we have are holy men. Earlier when Randy shared his flute, my people, we have the flute, and I have what I was going to share, how I pray. When I made my sacrifice with the Sundance and completed it, I was given my name Womlegichianga, and that means sits with eagle. And I was given the right to use this, which is called the Thunderbird whistle, or our people call the Waterbird whistle. And in our societies, there's one called the Grass Dance Society, and then this is a holy, a spiritual item. So, you know, not to say that we worship idols, or but what it represents is, you know, make the sound of like what you would hear like when in eagles calling. And when we're dancing together, if there was somebody with a sickness or somebody that was not feeling well in our dance circles, you could ask a whistle carrier like this to, you know, while a drum's singing, they would go use the whistle on the drum to have the drum sing the song longer, and then the whistle would be used 4 times, 4 additional verses in that. And so the whistle carrier would take that prayer, whether it's for themselves or for that individual or that family, and it would be like we're calling out to Creator. And so to reference back, the flute that Randy has, and then the Thunderbird whistle, and then our pipes. All of our holy men, they would pray with a pipe, or we call it chunupa, and you know, so it's pipestone with the pipe body. And but what I was telling Randy earlier is, when we didn't have tobacco on the plains, we would grind up sage, sweetgrass, cedar, berries and roots, and make it a really fine dust, and they would use that for the pipe, for the chunupa, to pray. So, you know, just like smoking, you know, like, you know, an old, just a regular English pipe, is similar, but it was used for prayers. And so when Europeans came, the smell when you burn sage, it actually smells like marijuana. And so when you mix all those together, a lot of mainstream people, they would say, oh, you know, like when you're making fun of somebody, they would say, stick that in your pipe and smoke it. They thought we were smoking marijuana, and that wasn't the case. And so I just wanted to point that out. I thought that was kind of funny when we're talking about it, when it comes down to tobacco. And so so when when we're gonna smudge and pray, things that look like on the plains, like we would pick our sweet grass, or excuse me, our sage, and keep it as such, and then we always braid our sweet grass. This is kind of an old dried up braid, but those are some of the two items that we would use. There is when we're in ceremony, there's a spiritual context to it. So like, and then there's different beliefs. So one of the beliefs that I individually have in my tribes is sage will remove all of the negative energy and help you. And even right now, like if you're sick, you could burn sage. Like even with this COVID, I'm wondering, if you had the infection and you burn sage and breathed in that, it would clean all the germs off of you. And then our sweetgrass, it smells really good just from the name. So sage would remove all the negative, and sweetgrass would ask like everything on this earth has a spirit, and so not in the heaven and hell sense that we're taught in Christianity, but everything is a living being, and so we'll use sweetgrass to awaken them or to call them. So a lot of times when Christians, like again, like I said, I grew up Catholic, so I went to Catholic school when I was growing up, and it was believed that we were worshiping the devil, or like when we talked about praying for the spirits or praying for our ancestors, it was misunderstood, and then these two items were for acknowledgement. So then looking at our sweetgrass, when we're going into our Sundance lodges, a lot of times your dancers will create like a hoop for the Sundance, or maybe even like a stick. So a lot of times we'll see things that we could buy in the store nowadays that look like this, and I would assume that these designs came from our people on the plains when we're going into Sundance. And so again, going back to how and why I smudge, so from a maternal sense, a man would have to go into a nipi, which is like a sweat lodge for that first cleansing, to sweat all that everything off of your body, and then from there we would use the sage and sweetgrass, tobacco, cedar, and when I prepare it, and I'm gonna burn it. I'm not gonna burn it here, but like just to give you an example, I don't burn it like this off of here, and it's just the way I was taught. So like if I'm praying with this item here, I'll make a ball of the sage, and then put that in my bowl with the sweetgrass and the tobacco, and the cedar, and then even when we're in a nipi, like in the sweat lodge, again, that's made for the man to clean himself, the same way that as a woman has a reproduction cycle every 30 days. That's the man's way to cleanse. So then to get the filth off of you would be using the sage. And then I was always taught, for when we're going into a nipi or into our ceremony lodges, any of the longhouse ceremonies, like what Randy talked about, or even if you're just giving an offering, we would always make a fire, and we don't have the convenience of just starting a fire outside your house, and we would take those coals from the earth that in order to burn your sweetgrass and your sage and your smudge, and then if you don't have that, I always get like a box of matches. I never use a lighter, and just for out of respect, not have, maybe it's a fire from the earth and the convenience of a matchstick, basically. So that's what I use there. And so, and then if I didn't have Smudge, before we went into our Sundance sacrifice, we would, like what I had to do and what most of our people do in the plains, especially the Lakota tribes, we call it Imblesia. So like before you go into the lodge, you actually would have to go into a place of being alone, like maybe on a hilltop or a holy place or a sacred place. And we would go there to pray for maybe the first 4 days and 4 nights, and then go into the lodge. And the reason for that was to give those, like to ask for those, the, like what I was saying, the beings of the earth to come to you and to help you when you're asking for things to sing or to dance or to wear paint, and then even to have our names, and then to have, you know, use of our eagle feathers. So those are the rites of passage that we had before to do that. And so that was called the Imblesia. So if I didn't have fire and I was going from Imblesia, you know, going maybe what's called a vision quest. So you do your vision quest, then you're going into a lodge and you didn't use fire, I would do the same. So we would, you know, I'd prepare a ball of the sage, and then we would wipe it and brush it on our body. So as if this was burning, we would use the same motion. So you could wave the smoke on you, but I always was told, you know, if you have a feather, to use the feather to bring it to you, because and I'll get to where that is. You know, we have that the eagle for most and all of our tribes is that messenger between, you know, creator Tugashila, God, and then our people. And so maybe that's not, maybe that's the Holy Spirit. And so we'll use his you know, feathers to help us bless and cleanse ourselves. And so so when I was talking with the staff, you know, if we didn't you know, if you didn't want to have to light a fire and didn't have access to matches and anything else, that's what I would recommend. You could wipe it on you. And then especially dancers, and then, you know, acknowledge my brothers, Mr. Peter Brooks and Mr. Randy. You know, when we put on our regalia, we were always taught too, you know, the same thing. We would smudge, and then even with that tobacco, you know, pasting that tobacco down because you had put down that gift that you had, but we'd also put this, whatever you use for that sage, on your body, and it could be whatever you're praying with. We would put that in our moccasins to protect where we're stepping in. And then, you know, anything that is a bad omen or anything that is negative, it's not going to affect us, you know, especially with our representation in our regalia and our items. So from there, the way I pray was taught with, you know, my Thunderbird whistle. And I'm not a holy man, as I mentioned. So like if we had a wakan or a pipe carrier, they have specific prayers for each direction. And so I pray in 4 directions. And I would first start with, you know, praying to the north, to the south, and then to the east and to the west. And it could be something simple with saying my name. I would say, you know, Tugashila, listen to me. God, listen to me. You know, Creator, listen to me. I'm Wombligi Changa. You know, this Europeans, they gave us names, you know, like Shawn or John or Mark, and those are not our names. You know, that like our sacrifice and our belief and our spirituality, those are ceremonial names, and we only experience that in this day and age, and it's hard to go back to it. A lot of us, we don't have the convenience of having you know, our ceremonial names. So you could just maybe use your family name, your ancestors, your grandparents when you're praying. And so again, I always like to make a reference back to, say, Jesus. So what's unique about like the sacraments of Jesus and his followers is when he prayed, he would always pray to his father, and then he'd pray to his mother, the earth, and then he'd pray to where the sun came up and then where the sun set. So when Christianity and Catholicism started to, from studying theology, that's a sign of the cross. So, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And so with the Knights Templar, that was their way of acknowledging for Jesus. That was their Lord. And so it's unique because when I was taught to pray with this, it's the same thing. I'm praying to the Father and the Mother, and then where the sun rises and where the sun sets. And so again, when I pray, I make it personal, and then what I was referring to with Emblesia, we could all practice Emblesia, like even tonight or tomorrow. It's necessary, especially when times are tough like this, or a new time in the world, like a new year, to meditate. And so meditate meaning, like with Emblesia, you go somewhere, where there's no one else, whatever feels sacred to you, and be alone, and whether you need to think or pray. And then these are the gifts that Creator gave us, the smudge, to help us feel that connection, and then to help us cleanse ourselves, to be able to be a part of the that we want to call it ceremony or spirituality in that respect. And so so that those are some of the things that I do, and then how we would do it without having to start a fire, and then just to be able to cleanse your body. Before I kind of move on, I was going to ask either Randy or Peter or anyone else that is here, if you wanted to respond or share, feel free, and then that'll prepare us to get to the next section.
Randy, we can't hear you. You have to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, the smudging process is exactly as Shawn said for us. And one of the things we're praying to, we pray for Awohali, the eagle, to take our prayers to the Creator, and those are actually are shared that way. Everything is a preparation for your prayers. The smudging, the sweat lodge, we call it an otse. We go to the otse to sweat. And then we also dance and pray. And one of the things we do, and I don't know if Shawn is familiar with this, but we do the 7 directions. It's northeast, south, west, the Creator, Mother Earth, and then the final is the presence where you are. That's the 7th direction where you're standing there. So that's kind of one of the things we do. And if there's any questions, I would answer them. And the smudging process is almost identical. So if there's a question, I'll answer it. If not, then you can ask somebody else.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
Yeah. The only thing that I thought of, and I think the presentation is excellent and the information is really good. Going back to the Sundance, that center pole, it's almost like a Christmas tree in that you're offering your flesh, your hunger, your thirst, and your comfort, and these are the gifts that we're giving in exchange for health and strength and spiritual gifts. And so we give these corporeal gifts to receive spiritual gifts.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Peter. We had just one question in the chat. I don't know, Shawn, if you want to answer that now or after.
Yeah, I looking at the time, I appreciate everybody's patience. And again, we can't ever plan these things. And so, I think we scheduled it for like an hour and a half, and we're getting right at that point. So maybe we can go into the last portion of the discussion and questions. And so, yes, that would be appropriate.
Awesome. Okay, so we just had one question. They were hoping that you could describe using or going to the water to cleanse to be described. I believe that was from Love Williams, and Love, you can feel free to unmute if you'd rather ask the question yourself as well.
Hi, this is this is Love Williams. I am Nipmuc of the Freshwater People from Central Massachusetts. I also serve on the Native Lifelines of Boston Board. Thank you for your teachings. Respectfully, I just wanted to ask this question, and if it's not okay to answer, that's fine, because I know this is being recorded. But we often go to the freshwater to pray. And I try to go there weekly, and we cleanse. First we smudge, and then we drink cedar tea, and then we cleanse ourselves with the water, and we sit with the water. And my belief and our belief is that if you listen quietly and patiently enough, that you can hear the water talk to you, and it's through that vessel that Creator uses to answer your prayers. So I was just curious. And I'm trying to learn other ways that people are using water to cleanse and to pray with. So that is my question. I hope that was thorough enough for you to be able to give a reply. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So thanks.
Thank you for that, Love. And so from what I was taught growing up, Sioux or Nakota, Lakota, Dakota, that's a Siouan belief. Or if we're looking at language distinctions, then we get into the Algonquian. And so my other side of the people that I am, the Cree, the Chippewa, the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, and the Ani, Haratsa, and Arapaho, we all speak Algonquian for our dialect. And so our belief is the same. So there's two areas in the country, definitely in Saskatchewan and the northern part of Canada, where our people lived once. There's an area called Fort Capel or Lake Fort Capel, and it's by Regina, Saskatchewan. So our people will sometimes even journey there and do a similar thing, because some of our creation story, like I said, when if we use the creation of Imamikwe and how the female came and then even like with the belief of the turtle, and it scooped the earth onto its back and brought us onto this earth. We do the same, and especially with the Anishinaabe, and then in like one of my favorite stories that when I grew up in North Dakota, we lived with the three affiliated tribes, the Mandan, Haratsa, and Arikara. And the Mandan and Haratsa, they lived where maybe current day Bismarck is now, and then where Fargo, North Dakota is, and there's an area there called Spirit Lake. And so our people were believed to have originated out of the water and came onto this earth, and then the ones that are here now, maybe the doorway closed and they couldn't go back. And so we go back there all the time and give offerings and do the same. We pray. And so there is a huge significance in our people for those tribes. And then maybe there's a huge connection with being Algonquian. And then I always like to think that we limit ourselves because the federal government, just pick it on the government, they put us on reservations and they gave us this ideology that we're confined. We're only confined to where the reservations live. But all of our people, I believe, I believe we're all Buffalo people, meaning that, throughout this whole continent, buffalo used to roam everywhere. So who's to say that my people didn't come to this area of the country or vice versa? And so a lot of our practices are the same. And so I always keep my mind open like that, because we're not limited to where the government says we are now. We have to remember that, we shared things in the past. So how did we get tobacco way over on the plains? So we had to have come over here. So I'm just saying, those are some unique significances. And thanks for sharing that, Love, because our people, the Haratsa, the Mandan, the Shoshone, the Arapaho, the Aani, the Atsini, the Anishinaabe, we all practice that same ceremony.
If anyone else has any questions, feel free to, you can either unmute and ask, or you can just drop them in the chat box. Yes, thank you, Shawn, for answering that. And thanks, Love, for your question.
Shawn, can you hear me? This is
Yep.
Randy.
Yeah, go ahead, Randy.
Hey, the water thing is a thing we do as well. And, it's kind of like, it's a cleansing. And if you go to water and you immerse yourself like 7 times, some people would used to use a crystal, and they'd look in the crystal, and if you were upside down, then you would go do it again. And look in the crystal until you were right, then you knew you had cleansed yourself. I have not done that myself, but I've heard that story told. So.
Thank you. I wanted to share with everybody, I appreciate the audience, and then I gotta be honest with you, like I said, in our ways, I'm glad Randy's here to support me. We always you have to be asked in my culture to be able to speak to our people, and then those customs were necessary because it gave us protocol, and then we're taught respect, and then times are changing. I remember recently, I had an uncle where he said, why don't you do the things that we're taught, like we're talking about right now? Why don't you do that? And I was always told, hey, you live in 2 worlds. Like I live in Washington, D.C., but I have all these things that I was taught. And then he said, I was always told, growing up, we had to do all those things in secret because it was against the law, and so we couldn't practice it. And so you almost got scolded, with the rites of passages that we're talking about here, because we were told never to share that with anybody. But times have changed. Things are some things might, especially with COVID, I hate to say that, but we might lose something that is important, and we don't document stuff on paper, and so we have to talk about it. And so I got kind of scolded by those same elders like that, and they said, we only told you that so you wouldn't abuse those situations, and then you don't have to separate the 2 worlds. And so that's where I was describing, I found a passion in my spirituality because I didn't need to be ashamed of understanding being an Irish Catholic and then having our spiritual belief, and it had nothing to do with religion. And then when it comes to these practices, I had a conversation probably about a month ago with some guys from back home that are part of our ceremony, and they said, hey, you know what, did you see on the internet there were people that were smudging and talking about it and praying? And they said they can't do that. And I said, who said they can't do that? Because look at where we're at right now. We can't even be together. We can't sit down like what I described at the beginning. We can't sit down in circles like we used to. And so those rules, and forgive me if I'm wrong, I'll be glad to be corrected and scolded, but I think it's just really necessary because it helps bring us all together again. And then not necessarily, like I said, I'm not a holy man and I'm not a leader of my people, but I think it's important to share what we're doing here. And then it's always important that, in all of our discussions, we have educators on here, we have veterans, and we have females, and we also have youth. And so all of that evolves around our youth first. And so we always need to remember that, some of these things, they can be discussed. And so, again, correct me if I'm wrong, scold me, but I just think it's necessary.
Shawn, can you hear me? This is Randy.
Yes, sir.
Something you might share with everybody. We're one generation from being extinct.
Yep, that's correct.
So that's a word that has to get out to everybody. We're one generation from being extinct. And if we don't pass it on, it'll be lost. So.
Correct. Yes. Well, I think we're probably close to the end of your agenda, Miss Emily, and the administration and the team. So I'll let you go ahead and turn it back there, then we'll get prepared for closing prayers and songs.
Thank you, Shawn. We had one more question from one of our youth members. They asked, what do you suggest for urban Indian youth who don't always have access to traditional medicine or water? If you have, that's from Michelle.
Well, so some of the Sundance leaders or spiritual leaders that I asked the same thing one time. If I didn't have, like, a lot of these things, I couldn't put in my suitcase and bring them here with me. Luckily, I have my vehicle, so I could put them in my vehicle and go. And then we have those challenges even with, like, our regalia when it comes to dancing and such. These are such sacred items, but mainstream doesn't understand it. So then there's no access to them. So again, I'm sure if I asked around, but in general, you can't find any of these, like sage and sweetgrass and cedar and, things. And I'm going to use Washington, D.C. So what I would say is, you can do the same thing in meditation by following the practices. And so with our especially our veterans, our warrior leaders and our holy men, they always tell us that, they give the ultimate sacrifice for all of us. They do it for the community. So when the sun rises and when the sun sets, you can practice things of meditation and being with yourself and being with the Creator by honoring that way. So even tobacco, it's very readily, and I don't encourage anybody to go buy a pack of cigarettes or something, but do that. If you have access to that, and challenge yourself. Get up early in the morning when the sun rises. Face the sun where it rises, and sit down, outside or inside, and then make an offering like that to the east, where the sun rises. And you don't have to have any specific kind of gospel to read. Just thank yourself and thank the Creator, and then ask for blessings for your family, and then every time that I eat a meal, I always do the same. Like if I'm smudging, I'll before I eat, in a religion you would say grace. Well, we do the same thing. We would lift our food and offer it to the Creator, and offer it to those that don't have a meal, or those that have gone away, or those that are mourning. Maybe they lost a loved one. And so those are other ways during the daytime that you can do that. And then right at bedtime, and going back to being like raised Catholic, you kneel down and say a prayer before you go to bed. Well, you do the same thing for our people. If you don't have access to Smudge and anything else, make the same practice. Sit down and face where the sun sets, and then make your offering. Could be food. We have what are called spirit plates. And so when we go to pray, we'll take whatever food we made, lunch, breakfast, lunch, dinner, put it on a small plate, and then take that, to the east or to the west, and make that offering. And then I like what Randy had talked about. There are 7 ways to pray, and then even if you could do any of those directions and it's not incorrect. So those are a way to participate like that too. And then the greatest thing is that we're getting so the immersion of all this idea, like we're on the internet right now. So we have organizations like NACUI, we have Native American Lifelines, we're in the urban areas. I'm a community member, come find us. And that's what I did first. You know, whenever I moved somewhere, you miss home and you miss what you're taught. And even if you weren't taught, you know, you'll find other Indigenous people to be with.
Shawn, can I add something? This is Randy. You know, one thing you can offer sometimes is just ground up coffee. That's an offering. But you know, they need to understand that every forest is different. One might be concrete, one might be trees.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you, Randy.
You're welcome.
So, Miss Emily, I'll turn it back to you, and you could tell us where we're at.
Thank you, Shawn. And thank you, Randy, for sharing.
You're welcome.
We appreciate you answering all of our questions and leading us through this and just sharing all of your wisdom with us, especially as it relates to being an urban Indian, like young adult or youth member. Moving forward with the presentation, we did go a little bit over, so I'm sorry about that, everyone, but I think it was worth it. And I just wanted to remind everyone that we really appreciate any feedback you have. If you just have a couple minutes to fill out the survey, you can just offer any comments you have about things you want to see in the future or what you would have liked to see changed. So I also dropped that link in the chat box as well. And then I wanted to remind everybody that NACUI has some events going forward on the next slide. We do have a bunch of events coming up in January. We have another, the third and final session for this series, which is about overcoming barriers to care for LGBTQ and Two-Spirit youth during COVID lockdown. And that's going to feature people like Tavi Han, who is going to present on their experiences. IHS COAG is also having a NACUI Urban Indian Health Policy Preview and Regulatory Training next week, January 12th at 2 to 3 p.m. And they're also having their final session in their homelessness series for Native youth. And so that's best practices for outreach and referrals for homeless youth during COVID-19. And it will be on January 26th in the afternoon Eastern time again. I think we can move to the next slide. I just wanted to say thank you again. I think some of us are on the East Coast and it's kind of late, so I really appreciate you sticking with us. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful time. And I appreciate you, Shawn and Randy, for all the work you put into this, for everything you shared. It was truly beautiful. And I'll hand it back to Shawn to lead the closing prayer for us.
All right. Well, once again, I thank everybody in our community and NACUI and Native American Lifelines and all of our brothers and sisters. And the song, again, that I'd like to close and share with, before I do that, I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge all of, like, for my family personally, you know, this pandemic has been terrible. I've had 12 close family members in Montana that have passed away from COVID-19 and the coronavirus, and I'll never see them again, but they're here with us right now. You know, they're here because we acknowledge them and we're praying for them. And so, you know, if we could always remember to take time to pray for those, and then to be good to one another. Don't be greedy, don't be selfish, you know, help people out, help anybody out. You don't know what somebody's going through, and then even if they don't appreciate it, at least you know you did the right thing. And but we got to be good to one another. And then coming into today and tomorrow, Our country is going through a lot of turmoil. We're losing our ways. There's a huge division when it comes to the politics, and then especially in Washington D.C., there's threats of violence, and people that don't need to be creating that kind of violence will. And so, I prayed to them that nobody is harmed and nobody, is faced with anything. Maybe pray there's no deaths. We have our military and other first responders that are putting their lives on the line for all of us in addition to the pandemic. And so if we could remember all of them, and then, pray for this change. So I'm glad we had this even right before tomorrow, an important day, because it's really heavy on my mind. The song that I'm going to share, I'll sing 2 verses of it, and then Randy's going to share a closing flute song. And so the song that I have reminds me of what this is about. It's our youth. And so this song is a Lakota prayer song that was composed by John around him on the Pine Ridge Reservation. And it was thought up and used for prayer in our Inipi, and then even in our public. Inipi is our sweat lodge. To the words mean the time for the youth is now. Now is the time for the youth. So we gotta, like what Randy said, we're one generation away from not existing anymore. And so the time to make these changes and these immersions is for the youth right now. So again, thank you, Nikui. And with that, I'll share my song.
Worcester.
Thank you, Randy and Shawn. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. I hope you have a safe and happy evening and Happy New Year to everybody.
What a Worcester. Thank you.
Good job.